Hello, my dear friends. Every once in a while, the world experiences a week that doesn't immediately look historic. There are no celebrations announcing it, no headlines saying that humanity has just crossed an invisible line. Most people continue following their routines, believing life is moving exactly as it did yesterday. But beneath the surface something begins to rearrange itself. This is one of those weeks. The question isn't whether change is coming. The question is whether people will recognize it while it's happening, or only after everything has already shifted. One pattern stands out above all others. For months, governments, corporations, financial institutions, and technology companies have been preparing for a future that the average person still believes is years away. That future is no longer distant. It begins demanding decisions now. Throughout this week, expect to hear more conversations surrounding artificial intelligence, digital infrastructure, cybersecurity, advanced manufacturing, and strategic resources. At first, these stories may appear unrelated. One headline speaks about new technology, another discusses international trade, a different report focuses on energy or military cooperation. Viewed separately, they seem ordinary. Viewed together, they reveal something much bigger. The world is quietly reorganizing its priorities. One development deserves particular attention. A dispute involving maritime interests or strategic shipping routes has the potential to become more visible. This doesn't necessarily mean a direct military confrontation. It could emerge through political pressure, economic negotiations, new restrictions, or unexpected demonstrations of strength. What matters isn't the event itself. It's what the event represents. Control over global movement, control over resources, control over influence. At nearly the same time, another struggle unfolds far from public view. This one doesn't involve oceans, it involves information. Governments become increasingly concerned about who controls data, communication systems, and emerging technologies. Several countries begin accelerating decisions that had remained stalled for months. Some of these decisions will surprise financial markets. Others will barely receive attention now, yet they may shape the next decade. Meanwhile, something hidden begins losing its ability to remain hidden. This could involve confidential negotiations, corporate decisions, classified information, or long-standing disagreements that quietly reach a breaking point. Many people will describe these developments as sudden. They won't be. These situations have been building for a very long time. This week simply removes the final layer covering them. One of the strongest impressions surrounding these days is that patience becomes increasingly rare. Leaders become more assertive. Executives move faster. Negotiators become less willing to compromise. Even ordinary conversations may feel unusually intense. People who have remained silent for months suddenly decide to speak. Others who believe they controlled every situation discover that circumstances have begun controlling them instead. This shift doesn't affect only governments or corporations. It reaches everyday life, inside families, business partnerships, friendships, and professional relationships. Unresolved tension becomes much harder to ignore. Some conversations that have been postponed repeatedly finally happen. Not because everyone suddenly becomes brave, but because avoiding them no longer feels possible. There is another pattern worth observing. Innovation begins moving faster than regulation. Several industries find themselves operating in spaces where clear rules simply haven't caught up yet. That gap creates enormous opportunity, but it also creates uncertainty. Some businesses thrive because they move first. Others hesitate, waiting for certainty that may never arrive. History often rewards those who prepare before everyone agrees something is changing. Another interesting movement appears within financial markets. Investors begin paying closer attention to sectors connected with artificial intelligence, energy infrastructure, rare minerals, cybersecurity, and advanced medicine. Money has a way of sensing change before public opinion does. It rarely waits for unanimous certainty. By the time everyone feels confident, the largest opportunities often belong to someone else. Toward the middle of the week, the emotional atmosphere becomes noticeably stronger. Small disagreements can suddenly become major conflicts if pride takes control. At the same time, honest dialogue has the power to solve situations that have remained unresolved for months. The difference won't depend on circumstances alone. It will depend on how people choose to respond when pressure increases. Perhaps the greatest lesson carried by this week is surprisingly simple. Major transformations rarely begin with dramatic announcements. They begin with quiet decisions, new alliances, unexpected conversations, small discoveries, and invisible shifts that only make sense when viewed months later. By the time the entire world realizes history has changed, history has usually been changing for quite some time already. One of the easiest mistakes to make during a week like this is believing that the biggest stories will be the loudest ones. They won't. Some of the most important developments may receive only a few minutes of attention before disappearing beneath the next breaking headline. But those paying close attention will notice a pattern. The world is beginning to reward preparation instead of reaction. Several governments accelerate investments in areas that, until recently, seemed secondary. Artificial intelligence remains at the center of this movement, but it isn't acting alone. Semiconductor manufacturing, satellite technology, quantum research, energy security, and cyber defense begin appearing together more frequently. This is rarely a coincidence. When different nations start strengthening the same sectors simultaneously, it usually means they are preparing for a reality they believe is approaching much faster than the public expects. Another movement deserves careful observation. A well-known technology company, or perhaps more than one, may introduce an announcement that initially appears to concern only software or digital services, yet its long-term consequences extend much further. Entire professions begin asking new questions. Universities reconsider what students should be learning. Businesses rethink hiring strategies. Investors quietly reposition capital. Sometimes one announcement changes thousands of future decisions. This week carries that possibility. At the same time, financial markets continue searching for stability in an environment that feels increasingly unpredictable. Instead of broad confidence, there may be selective confidence. Money doesn't flow everywhere equally. It begins concentrating in industries perceived as essential for the next decade: artificial intelligence, energy infrastructure, critical minerals, advanced healthcare, cybersecurity. These sectors attract attention not because they are fashionable, but because they are becoming necessary. Meanwhile, another development begins taking shape far from stock exchanges. Several countries revisit questions involving national security. Some strengthen military partnerships. Others announce new defense agreements. A few choose diplomacy instead. Different strategies, the same underlying concern. No nation wants to discover it prepared too late. Nature may also remind humanity that technology cannot control everything. Weather-related events, seismic activity, flooding, drought, or unusual environmental conditions could once again draw international attention. These events may not become global catastrophes, but they serve as powerful reminders of how interconnected modern civilization has become. A disruption in one region can affect supply chains, food prices, transportation, and insurance across multiple continents. That interconnectedness becomes impossible to ignore. Another interesting shift appears inside the labor market. Many people continue fearing that artificial intelligence will replace human work entirely. The reality unfolding this week looks more complex. Some repetitive roles continue disappearing, yet entirely new opportunities emerge at the same time. The greatest advantage no longer belongs simply to those with experience. It increasingly belongs to those willing to learn continuously. Adaptability becomes one of the world's most valuable skills. Relationships between nations also enter a more delicate phase. Some negotiations advance unexpectedly, others slow down without obvious explanation. Public statements may sound diplomatic, while private discussions become considerably more difficult. This creates an atmosphere where appearances can easily become misleading. What is said publicly may reveal very little about what is actually happening behind closed doors. Toward the second half of the week, another emotional pattern begins surfacing. People become less willing to tolerate situations that have quietly drained their energy for months. Some finally resign from jobs they no longer believe in. Others distance themselves from unhealthy relationships. Businesses abandon projects that no longer make financial sense. Governments reconsider policies that have produced limited results. Although these decisions occur in completely different environments, they all reflect the same underlying movement: a growing refusal to continue investing time, money, or energy into structures that no longer serve their original purpose. That may become one of the defining themes of this entire period. Not destruction for its own sake, but selective transformation, choosing carefully what deserves to move forward and what has quietly reached the end of its usefulness. By the close of this week, many people may still believe they have witnessed a collection of unrelated events, but those looking more carefully may recognize something else entirely. The first visible chapters of a much larger global transition have already begun. While the world seems occupied with governments, technology, and financial markets, another transformation unfolds much closer to home. It happens quietly, inside homes, inside conversations, inside decisions that no one else will ever witness. This week carries an unusual invitation to stop postponing what has already become obvious. Many people have spent months waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect answer, the perfect certainty. Yet certainty rarely arrives before action. It usually appears afterward. That realization becomes stronger throughout these days. Some people finally decide to begin a project they have imagined for years. Others recognize that a chapter has already ended, even if they haven't admitted it to themselves. Not every ending arrives with conflict. Sometimes it arrives with clarity. One emotional pattern becomes especially noticeable. The desire for authenticity grows stronger than the desire for approval. People become less interested in pretending everything is fine simply to avoid uncomfortable conversations. Masks become heavier to wear. False confidence becomes more difficult to maintain. Appearances lose some of their power. Truth gains more. This doesn't mean everyone suddenly becomes honest. It means pretending requires much more energy than before. Relationships may reflect this change in different ways. Some friendships naturally become stronger. Others quietly fade. Neither outcome should automatically be viewed as success or failure. Sometimes relationships fulfill their purpose for a particular season of life. When that season ends, forcing them to remain exactly the same only creates unnecessary suffering. Families may also experience meaningful conversations. Old misunderstandings have the opportunity to be clarified, not because the past changes, but because people's willingness to understand each other begins changing. In professional life, many discover that growth no longer depends only on working harder. It depends on working differently. Those who continue learning, adapting, and exploring unfamiliar skills may notice opportunities appearing where others see only uncertainty. Curiosity becomes an advantage. Flexibility becomes an asset. Fear, however, tells a different story. Many individuals may feel overwhelmed by the speed of change. New technologies, new expectations, new responsibility, new ways of communicating. At times, it may seem as though the world has accelerated without asking anyone for permission. Yet, history has always moved this way. Every generation eventually reaches a moment when yesterday's certainty no longer guarantees tomorrow's success. This week reminds people that resisting change rarely stops it. Understanding change is usually far more productive. Financially, caution remains wiser than impulsiveness. Excitement can create the illusion that every opportunity must be seized immediately. That illusion has caused countless mistakes throughout history. Careful observation may prove more valuable than emotional reactions. Sometimes the best decision isn't moving faster, it's seeing more clearly. Emotionally, another lesson quietly emerges. Not every battle deserves your energy. Some conflicts disappear the moment you refuse to participate in them. Others reveal their true nature only after silence replaces argument. This distinction becomes increasingly important throughout the week. Choosing peace should never be confused with avoiding responsibility. Likewise, defending your values should never require unnecessary hostility. Balance becomes a form of wisdom. One unexpected conversation could alter someone's direction completely, not because it contains magical words, but because it arrives at exactly the right moment. Never underestimate the power of timing. A single sentence heard during the right season of life can accomplish what years of advice never could. There is also a growing sense that many people are beginning to redefine success. For some, success no longer means earning more. It means living with greater freedom. For others, it means finding meaningful work instead of simply stable work. Some begin prioritizing health. Others prioritize time with family. Others finally choose peace over constant competition. These changes may appear deeply personal. Yet, when millions of people begin redefining their priorities at the same time, societies themselves begin to change. Perhaps that is the quiet transformation unfolding beneath everything else this week. The headlines may focus on politics, markets, technology, or international affairs, but the most important revolution often begins somewhere much smaller, inside the human heart. Because every lasting change in history first begins as an invisible decision made by ordinary people. As this week approaches its final days, something subtle begins to happen. The noise remains, the headlines continue, markets keep moving, governments continue negotiating, technology continues advancing. But beneath all of that, people begin making decisions, not dramatic decisions that attract attention. Quiet ones, the kind that completely redirect the future without anyone realizing it in the moment. This is why the end of this week feels different from the beginning. Early in the week, events appear chaotic. By the end, patterns begin emerging. Pieces that once seemed disconnected slowly start fitting together. Some leaders recognize that delaying important choices is becoming more dangerous than making imperfect ones. Businesses start shifting priorities. Investors become more selective. Families begin discussing plans they had postponed for months. Individuals reconsider where they want to live, how they want to work, and what kind of life they truly wish to build. These are not temporary emotions. They reflect a deeper realization. The world is changing faster than many expected. Waiting indefinitely is no longer a strategy. Preparation becomes the new form of security. One final trend deserves careful attention. Several industries may experience growing pressure to become more transparent. Consumers are asking more questions. Governments are demanding greater accountability. Investors want clearer answers. Trust is becoming one of the world's most valuable currencies. Organizations that protect it strengthen their future. Those that ignore it may discover how quickly confidence can disappear. This same principle reaches everyday life. Promises become more meaningful. Integrity becomes more visible. People begin paying closer attention to actions rather than words. Reputation is no longer built by what someone claims. It is built by what consistently proves to be true. Another interesting shift appears in the way people define success. For years, speed has often been celebrated above everything else. Move faster, produce more, do more, be everywhere. This week quietly challenges that belief. Sometimes wisdom isn't found in acceleration, it's found in direction. Moving quickly toward the wrong destination has never been progress. Knowing where you're going has always mattered more than how fast you arrive. There is also a growing awareness that knowledge alone is no longer enough. Information has become abundant. Discernment has become rare. Millions of people have access to the same facts. Far fewer know how to interpret them. That difference will become increasingly important in the years ahead. Those who develop clear judgment, emotional balance, and the ability to remain calm while others panic may discover opportunities invisible to everyone else. Perhaps that is one of the greatest lessons hidden within this week. Periods of uncertainty do not reveal only weaknesses. They also reveal character. They show who adapts, who learns, who remains grounded, who allows fear to make every decision. History is often remembered through major events, wars, elections, economic crises, scientific breakthroughs, but history is actually shaped by countless ordinary people making extraordinary decisions during ordinary days. This week reminds us that the future is rarely created by one single moment. It is built through thousands of choices that seem small while they are happening. Every conversation, every decision, every opportunity accepted or ignored, every lesson embraced or repeated. The coming days may not answer every question the world is asking, but they have the potential to reveal something equally valuable, where humanity is beginning to go, and more importantly, how each of us chooses to move within that changing world. As one chapter quietly unfolds, another is already beginning, not with certainty, not with fear, but with possibility. And those who remain attentive, thoughtful, and willing to grow may discover that even in times of profound change, the greatest opportunities often arrive disguised as ordinary moments.